So hello, everybody. It's Jim Budd, former senior patrol agent with United States Border Patrol, and I'm now an immigrant rights activist and author, and I'm here today with my partner, Mariana Trevino-Wright, who's an activist in McAllen area, Mission, Texas area, and a Borderlands resident. And today we are honored to have Vyonne Neverez with us. She is a Tono Orom native, and unfortunately fortunately she is the niece of Raymond Mattia, who was a wonderful man, according to my understanding of talking with Vyonne. But unfortunately, the Border Patrol gunned down her uncle in his own front yard, and he was unarmed at the time and obeying their orders. And so we are very fortunate to have her with us during this time that I'm sure that she is grieving and dealing with all these other issues. So Vyonne, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your uncle and what we should know, what you want us to know about your uncle?
Yeah. So I knew my uncle my whole life. He was only 15 years old when I was born, and he and my mom were very close. Um, he was always around. My father died when I was 9 years old, and he kind of stepped in and took that father figure place for me and my siblings. He had silly nicknames for all of us. He loved just sitting around telling stories. He was very involved with the community, and um, he was a ceremonial person, a singer. He was an artist. He just loved being around his family and his kids, and um, he was on the community board, which is an elected seat. Um, if anyone from the village, like be it my mom or another elder person, needed help, he would drop everything he was doing and go help them. He also spoke out against Border Patrol corruption. There's 2 articles out there where he talks about what's happening in his community with Border Patrol, and I think he did that because he wanted it to be a safe place for us and his kids to grow up. Unfortunately, the way his life ended, kind of, it feels like a slap in the face.
I think we should explain to people who may be watching or listening to this podcast that in case you don't know, the Tono Orom Nation is in Arizona and also extends south into Mexico quite a way. So you have many members of your nation on both sides of the border. And there's been obviously a long issue with the Border Patrol, but specifically since, I would think, in our recent memory, so from the 90s and the militarization from when I was an agent, and then trying to build walls, and then come on your nation, which is a sovereign nation and is recognized as a sovereign nation by the United States of America. And since since I guess the 90s, but certainly during the Trump administration, I recall a lot of arguments between the nation with wanting to build the new wall, which separates your people and you can no longer freely walk your land. And then also just that what I find interesting, because from the Border Patrol standpoint, being a former agent, I knew of your nation. And what I knew of your nation was the propaganda taught to me from the Border Patrol was that the majority of you are drug smugglers or migrant smugglers and all this. And when I went and I looked at like the Border Patrol's union podcast, and I went through every single podcast they had and found everything they talked about with the Tono Orom Nation. And just for short, for listeners, we often say the TO Nation. And it's pretty negative. They are still talking about the tribal members of your nation as being criminals, as being drug smugglers, and all this other stuff. But what I find interesting is since the mid-90s, the deterrence policies have intentionally pushed people onto your native lands. And so we make your native lands, which tend to be, if you're trying to traverse them, quite inhospitable, if you're trying to do it by walking. And unfortunately, a lot of people die. So it's interesting to me that they blame the TO Nation for a lot of illegal activity, and yet the Border Patrol is the one that has pushed the illegal activity onto your nation. And this is the result, this militarization. Is it an everyday thing? Like if you leave your house to go to the store, or you go to see the doctor or something like that, what are the chances that you're going to have an encounter with a Border Patrol agent, Yvonne?
Yeah, going back to the 90s, when we would go like have picnics out in the desert or on the mountains, and we would always get approached by Border Patrol asking to see our IDs, asking what we're doing, being questioned, which is very frustrating to us. And like you said, when we're driving down the road to go to the store, which is at least an hour away, they do follow us for long periods of time. It seemed like they more often would pull us over years ago, but not so much anymore. But yes, they would pull us over, ask us for IDs, question again, but not so much anymore. Now it seems like they just follow us, and it feels like an intimidation attack. But they haven't pulled me over in a while, so.
Okay, so it does happen, but it's not necessarily an everyday thing. Yeah. So let's get to this night of what happened. Unfortunately, it seems that there were a couple things going on. One was your uncle, Raymond, had an encounter with, we don't know who, somebody busted into his house and demanded to use his cell phone, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, he said one person entered his home, speaking English, demanding to use his phone. He said no, he told them to leave. Another one came in, and another. So there was 3 in total arguing with him.
And it's not uncommon, obviously, as we said, the Border Patrol has pushed a lot of the crossers and the drug smugglers, unfortunately, to your native land. And so it wouldn't be uncommon for you all, or for Raymond, to have something like, well, busting into his house maybe is uncommon, but to see them on the property or traversing in the area around that. That's correct?
Yes, my mom even had 3 men run after her, and she ran into her yard and said she was gonna call the policia. And so it depends on the person, sometimes they're threatening, sometimes they're not. So
Yeah,
yeah.
certainly. So on that day, he ended up calling the Border Patrol to ask for assistance. Is
I don't
that
know
right? Correct?
I don't know if it was Border Patrol specifically.
Mhm.
And they didn't necessarily bust into his house. He has like an open doorway where they walked into his home. And he was asked, did you call somebody? Because he did chase him away,
Mhm.
but he was afraid of them coming back. He felt threatened. So he was asked, did you call somebody? And he said yes. So we don't know if he called Border Patrol or TOPD.
Okay. Okay. And that's important too, is that the Tono Odom Nation is a large nation, and they do have their own police. And that's the Tono Odom Police Department, for short, TOPD. And because like the reservation that I worked on in La Posta, that at the time they didn't have their own PD, so they would have to call us for a lot of things as well. But the Border Patrol and nobody showed up, is my understanding, for
Yeah,
quite a few hours.
it was hours until
Mhm.
uh vehicles started showing up, like multiple vehicles started showing up into the yards.
Mhm.
And so they
At the
thought,
time, your uncle's probably thinking, oh, they're coming because
yeah,
I called somebody.
that's what
And
I thought. Mhm.
okay, so that's what he thought. Well, that's what he likely thought. We don't know because we can't talk to him right now. And my understanding is that a family member also, because there's multiple houses of family members that live in the same area, and one of the family members, and we don't want to say anybody's names, but one of the family members saw the vehicles coming and was on the phone with your uncle as they were getting out of their vehicles and then running down towards his house, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this family member saw the vehicles coming up into the whole yard. There's 4 houses on the compound. And so they were entering all the yards. They thought they were going to their house. They called my Uncle Ray and said, there's a bunch of Border Patrol here. What do I do? And then my uncle said, just go tell them to leave or tell them to come over here. And the family member said, no, I don't want to talk to them. And then they noticed that they were running toward my uncle's house down a wash. So they let my Uncle Ray know they're going to your house. I see them running with flashlights. And so then my Uncle Ray told this person, okay, I'll go talk to them. In a very calm voice. He wasn't agitated at all. He just said, okay, I'll go talk to them. And seconds later is when they heard the guns blasting.
Okay. And so did you go to the scene when you heard the gunfire? Did you hear the gunfire?
No, I was here in Tucson.
Okay.
My family member lives right next door. They heard everything. She wanted to go there, she said, but she was afraid of being shot herself. When she first heard the gunshot, she said that she thought it was a shootout between the cartel and Border Patrol. I mean, that was running through her mind. But she heard someone say Raymond's name and get my bag. So once she heard that, she knew it was my Uncle Ray. And a Border Patrol was walking by, and she asked, what are you shooting at? Are you shooting at Raymond? And then, or did you shoot Raymond? He said, we possibly did.
Wow. So he seems to know who he shot.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until later that the Border Patrol, through their parent agency, CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection, CBP, their Office of Professional Responsibility, for short, that's OPR. It's kind of like their internal affairs unit. They released this video, but in the past, so since they've gotten their cameras, they've started releasing body cam video, and they claim to be more transparent, and they're trying to show transparency. And in the past, the few videos that they've released have been just raw footage with no commentary whatsoever. And they, and maybe in the beginning they'll say, on this date, we got a call about this, and this is the video that happened. But in this case, what I find so interesting is they take 3 different cameras. There were 10 agents there, 10 Border Patrol agents, plus at least 1 TOPD officer, if not more. And according to the Border Patrol, all the agents had their body cams on. And yet the video that we see publicly is the same video they brought your family in to see at CBP OPR. And it's basically almost like a documentary where they edit the videos and they only show 3 of the videos. Is that correct?
Yes. And my family asked about that when we were there. We didn't understand why we were watching this edited footage. We asked, weren't there 10 cameras there? And they agreed and said, yes, there were 10 cameras. Well, why aren't we seeing all the cameras? Why aren't we seeing raw footage? Why is there words being redacted? And all OPR could say was, that's not available to me. I don't have it. It's in Washington. All the body cams were sent to Washington, and Washington edited this video and put it out. And this is all we have, basically.
Huh.
Jen,
Go ahead, Mariana.
my understanding concerning these body cameras is that the video is being transmitted to the cloud,
Uh-huh.
basically in real time. And if not in real time, because there's some jam or delay, or they're in an area where there's, you know, for satellite or
Spotty
communications
service, yeah.
interaction, spotty service, that when they return to their unit, or worst case scenario, when they return to the station, everything is uploaded to the cloud. Do you know anything about this?
I honestly don't know how they would do that, but I would think that obviously they have to be using some sort of cloud service or something. The idea that they actually physically take these, I mean, certainly if it's evidence, they might take that body cam and hold it so that it's never recorded over, or this or that, and I'm not sure how that's done, but definitely you would want to make sure that you have everything. And I would imagine that this concept of we've taken the body cam and physically flew it or mailed it to DC seems kind of odd. It seems kind of weird. And if TOPD is the one leading the investigation, which they are because it is their nation, and the shooting occurred within their jurisdiction, so they have the right to do that. It would seem that those videos should be turned over to the or the cameras in themselves should be turned over to the TOPD first. Now, I know that the FBI and CBP OPR are also saying that they're doing investigations. I find it interesting that CBP OPR is claiming that they're not doing the investigation right now. They're waiting on TOPD to finish their investigation. That's actually not required. And in some instances, they'll say we're doing a parallel investigation. So I find some of the things that they told you when you were there and your family to be disingenuous at best, if not outright lies. Did you know anything about Border Patrol having secret cover-up teams before your uncle died?
No.
I'm sorry, before your uncle was murdered?
Yes. As far as I knew, I mean, I really didn't care, but once this happened to my Uncle Ray, I did hear that the Border Patrol do their own internal investigations, which made me feel like nothing was going to get done. They're going to get away with it. But when we were there, the OPR claimed that they were no longer doing their own internal investigation. He said, the man who was speaking for them, because there were several OPR agents there, the man who was speaking for them said that OPR doesn't have to answer to Border Patrol. Border Patrol has to work with them and do this investigation. And but the way they presented this footage makes me feel like a cover-up. Like they're covering it up.
Because they won't show you 7 of the other cameras, which could show a completely different angle,
Yes.
or something that, because we want to see, the idea would be to see all the evidence and then get a big broad picture of what happened. If the agents are right, then fine, we'll say the agents are right. But it does not appear that way. The other thing I find interesting is that they're claiming that they're not doing that investigation right now, but yet they bring in the family. Some of the family were witnesses to what the Border Patrol was doing after they murdered your uncle, like picking up shell casings and things like that. And so they say they're not part of the investigation, but yet they're bringing in witnesses to the investigation and showing them evidence. They shouldn't, that can corrupt a case. That can end up, why are you showing witnesses video? And it's not that your family shouldn't see the video, but if they are a witness that could be in the future testifying in court, you don't want to influence their testimony. So it would seem to me that Border Patrol, although they're claiming that they have nothing to do with this investigation. And then you go to CBP OPR and they're like, well, no, the TOPD and the FBI are doing the investigation. We're just, assisting. And yet they go and grab witnesses to the scene and start showing them video from the scene. I mean, that seems, Mariana, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say, you and I both know that the FBI, the TO police department are not in charge. Even OPR is not in charge. It is the Border Patrol critical incident teams that are in charge of all of this. And very much the ones orchestrating the cover up, editing video, contaminating crime scenes, or influencing witnesses, intimidating people through a variety of means, whether that is strongly suggesting silence from family members and others, or as they did at the Butterfly Center, actually threatening my staff and media. Put down your phones. You can't photograph us or video us. If you do, we're going to confiscate your phones and your cameras. We can arrest you for interfering with an investigation, even though all you're doing is standing on your own private property observing them. So I would be interested, I understand Yvonne was not there, but have you or your family members at any point in this had those types of experiences with agents or officials who may not identify themselves as part of the CITs?
Yeah, they didn't present themselves like that at all. They tried to, I think, deflect from that because we did ask them about the investigation and if we were going to be able to see reports and all that. The only people who were interested in hearing the witnesses who were there were TOPD. And they were able to get the witness statements. But while we were there viewing the video, we tried making statements about what happened that night, and OPR acted like they didn't want to hear it because what they told us was that first TOPD is going to do their investigation. When they're done with their investigation, they will send it to the U.S. attorney. U.S. attorney will decide whether he's going to press criminal charges against Border Patrol. Then the investigation will go to OPR. They will do an investigation and send it to the Border Patrol administration, who will, and then they will decide what they're going to do as far as disciplinary actions against the agents.
Do we know if CBP OPR was on the scene that night?
No,
we don't know.
We don't know.
So it could be possible that they allowed TOPD to do the scene, which would be documenting the scene and all that other stuff, or the SITs could have been there. We don't know. When you went in and your family went in to view the video or the videos that you thought you were going to see, did CBP OPR agents say anything to you about speaking about the case or going to the press or talking to the press? Because I'm sure the press has been knocking on your door quite a bit.
Yes. One of them did mention that, well, first we were asking questions like, okay, so you're saying he was shot 9 times. Can you tell us how many times he was shot at? And he said it was still in their investigation. He said, we can't talk about it. Sometimes you think if you're talking about certain things to other people, you think you're helping, but you're actually hurting the criminal investigation.
So he's telling you to be careful about going to the press and talking about the investigation because you could hurt your uncle's investigation. Yes. So he's threatening you to be quiet about this.
That's what it felt like. It felt like he was saying, don't say anything, or nobody's going to be punished criminally.
So let's talk about the other reporting, other than we have this morning incident or earlier in the day incident with your uncle where somebody comes into his house and he calls for help and no help comes. And then the Border Patrol's video, the CBP video that they put out, is they give the audio of the TOPD dispatcher. So that's the Tono Odom dispatcher, which is sounds like a young woman, and then the Border Patrol dispatcher. So TOPD dispatch calls Border Patrol dispatch and says, we need your help on the reservation. We have a report of shots fired somewhere on the west end in Miniger's Dam. And your family compound is in that general area. But what I find interesting is that the TOPD dispatcher goes into this explanation of who they think this person is, but yet they're not saying your uncle's name. They just say this person, and then they say that the day before, the person that they think is doing the shooting apparently either did shoot or shot at the woman who's complaining and her mother. And that somehow this person has a lot of rifles and they're really worried. And it's just somewhere over in Miniger's Dam and something about a restraining order. Now, I mean, as an agent, this sounds really odd to me, because if my Border Patrol dispatcher said, we got a call, you got to go back up San Diego PD or whoever on blah, 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 shots fired. Well, number one, shots fired on the border is very common. And if I heard shots fire on La Posta Indian Res, I would be like, because people have the right to shoot on their property, especially down here on the border. And I wouldn't necessarily think that that's a nefarious thing or anything I need to be concerned with, especially as a Border Patrol agent. So at any rate, this gets called in, but I would want my dispatcher to say, if he has a restraining order, if you know this person that you think is causing these shots fired and you're worried about it, I would expect my dispatcher to run all the records checks they possibly could. I would want to know that person's name. I would want to know the exact address. I would want to know if there's been any prior violence or guns or anything like that. And I would, if you have a restraining order on the person, if the person's been arrested before for anything, I want a dang picture, because I want to know who I'm confronting. I don't want to go up to Yvonne. I don't want to go up to Mariana with my gun drawn and pointed at them when they have nothing to do with this. But it seems that none of that was done. Is that correct?
No, it doesn't seem that way. Yeah, we couldn't understand the dispatch from the TOPD because it just sounded very unprofessional. No quotes given, no. And then she, like you said, she goes into this explanation. So if they were talking about my Uncle Ray, I don't understand, because my Uncle Ray was out of town the day before celebrating his birthday. And no one was shot, no one was killed. So yeah, and then the way they were redacting the name they were talking about in the video makes us question that as well.
Makes you possibly think that they're not saying Raymond Mattia.
Yeah.
Okay, because it doesn't make any sense to redact his name when we all know it's Raymond Mattia. Go ahead, Mariana.
And this whole thing was
your mouth open. You're like, huh?
Yeah. So the whole thing was very confusing for me. And as you're saying, shots fired on the border, the Butterfly Center, we are literally next door to a firing range. So we're hearing, because there's a like a senior retirement community and an RV park down the road. And so your, 75-year-old mother or father and their recreational firearms can come next door to the Butterfly Center and have target practice and fun with their friends.
Yeah, and then the dispatcher also says that they can't pinpoint where the shots are coming from.
So you're just supposed to meander around the west side of Miniatures Dam.
Yeah, like, it's coming from the west side. We don't know where.
How big
And
is this area we're talking about? Are we talking about a block? Are we talking about acres?
so there's a highway that splits the village, and pretty much half and half.
Okay.
There's about 50 to 80 houses on one side, same for the other side.
That's a
So
big area. That's a
it is
big area to just send people blindly in and say, somebody's shooting. We don't know what's going on.
yeah,
And
there's a lot of houses on the west side.
and this and that. Yeah. And so, and then then you hear the Border Patrol dispatch ask for people to respond, people respond, and the TOPD requests that Border Patrol meet them at the rec center.
Mhm.
And so they meet at the rec center. And so then we see body cam footage of Border Patrol agents. We see the TOPD officer, and they're looking on their phones. The TOPD officer knows exactly what compound it is. So the assumption is they're talking about the Mattia compound, which is your uncle's compound with 4 houses on it. And then he asked the Border Patrol agents, do you guys know this guy? And so, but they keep bleeping out his name.
Mhm.
Why bleep out his name? And then they're looking at the compound and he's saying, oh, this is his house. So the TOPD officer is like apparently knowledgeable of your family's compound and who your family is. And then he says that he knows, quote, the motherfucker.
Mhm.
He calls who we assume is your uncle, but we're not sure because they keep bleeping out the name.
Yeah.
And then they say motherfucker. And for me as an agent, I put myself in a position, obviously as an agent, when I hear another officer say, yeah, I know this motherfucker, I'm like, well, this must be a bad person because this is what this officer is telling me. And then the next thing is, oh, he's got several rifles, which then makes him sound dangerous to me. And then say, oh yeah, we know him. And then Border Patrol ask other agents who aren't there on their cell phones, do you know this guy? And they're like, oh yeah, we know this guy, and blah, 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 blah. So apparently they know this guy. They go directly to the house. So from the time the dispatcher calls Border Patrol, now either they have learned where the exact location is, or they knew the whole time. And Border Patrol is, and it's not, and they're not showing it in the video for whatever reason, and they're bleeping out the names. And then the Border Patrol, the first camera you see, and I call him Border Patrol agent number 1, he says, oh, this motherfucker, and starts running down the wash towards your uncle's house. And so you see he's embodied that distrust, this person's dangerous, this person's armed. TOPD has called him a motherfucker. Now I'm calling him a motherfucker, and we're going to go get him. Yeah. And so they all run down there, and you see the TOPD officer, and you hear him say to, now we know is your uncle, Mr. Mattia, he tells them to come here, and your uncle is very calm and says, I am, like, I'm doing what you're telling me to do. And then he tells him, drop it. And so he does. What he does is he has in his hand a machete, and it's a sheath machete, meaning it's in its holder. And he lobs it high in the air and tosses it towards the TOPD officer so it lands at his feet. I know that as an agent to be somebody is disarming when they lob it high in the air. And for people who don't know, I saw a lot of people on Twitter and stuff going, oh, you had a machete. Okay, I have a machete. And I don't live right on the border.
Yeah.
And machetes are not illegal, and they are used for snakes, and they are used for all sorts of things, and choya and you name it. They are a common tool down here on the border. Mariana, do you have something?
My staff carry knives. They all have knives. I have a Leatherman. They have machetes. I often have a sidearm, as you saw when you were here. That's not a base.
What's the one thing that Mr. Mattia did not have in his hand?
A gun.
A rifle.
A
a
rifle.
rifle, which is what they said the whole time.
Well,
And so, yeah, go ahead.
there's a term for what dispatch and the TOPD officer did, and it's called priming the pump. And if you've ever grown up in a rural area where you have to use a pump to get the water out of the ground, you have to pump it, many times to get the pressure built up and the water coming out, to get the flow going of what you're ultimately trying to achieve. So when you start with this sort of talk and language and laying this foundation, this is a dangerous person, we have a history with him, he's armed, all of these things, you are priming the pump. And Yvonne, did your uncle or does your family have a history with this TOPD officer or with TOPD?
Not that I know of. I really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
My uncle wasn't a violent man. He didn't have a lot of run-ins or or getting arrested a lot or being stopped by cops a lot.
But it's interesting that the TOPD makes it seem like they do. And then, like, as I said, as a former agent and what I know and what I've been taught about the tribal lands and so forth, and then listening to the vice president of the Border Patrol Union, Art Del Cueto's podcast, where he's constantly talking about TOPD. At one point, he said 50%, he claimed 50% of narcotics in the United States come from the TO nation. That is bullshit. I mean, that is just a lie. And then you turn around and you get the representative, I think his name's Paul Gosar. He's a big Border Patrol fanatic. He actually in Congress said 80 to 90% of Tono Odom tribal members are drug dealers. That is a lie. That is not true. Are there members of the tribe smuggling? Yes. Are there members of the Border Patrol smuggling? Yeah. Are there white people smuggling? Yeah. Are there Mexican American smuggling? Yeah. So, I mean, there are just as many. You could say that about the Border Patrol. Every month there's a new Border Patrol agent arrested for something. So we could say that about all the Border Patrol agents. But the fact of the matter is, this night, what they are dealing with is a call about a man with several rifles, and they won't say his name, and they redact the name. And then we get to the point of the actual shooting, and your uncle has his hands in his pocket, because as I know the desert, it's generally cold at night, even in the summertime. Sometimes it can be cold at night. And when I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was a rainy night that night as well.
Okay. It was a rainy night that night. And he comes out and he disarms as he's asked to do. And then the Border Patrol agent with the body cam on starts yelling at him to take his hands out of his pocket. And so as he does that, and he does it, if you slow down the footage, he does it within a second of being asked or ordered to do it. And he does it, and you see his arm comes out to the side and down. And that's when they shoot him. And that's because, and the Border Patrol's response and the way they described it happening, CBP in their press release, was he suddenly moved his arm away from his body. And that's why we shot him. That's not a justification for shooting. No. Even if he was armed, perhaps he was going and dropping that weapon, if he did have a weapon, but he did not have a weapon in his hand. He had a cell phone in his hand. And I want to say this, I want everybody to know this, even in the 90s, as a Border Patrol agent, you are required to qualify with your service weapon 4 times a year at a minimum. And you are required to go through the video shooting scenarios where a person has their hands in their pocket and they pull out a cell phone. And that's to make, because you will kill an innocent person. And you're supposed to realize how much you have to pay attention to their hands and what is going on. So every single Border Patrol agent that was there that night has had immense firearms training. and the family should be able to see how they qualified and if they passed those tests. And you should be able to see and know, at least in a court of law, did they pass the scenarios, the shooting scenarios on video, where it measures, you know, use a specific like computer gun and it will show you if you hit them or not. And it'll say bad shoot or good shoot. That's all to teach you that how easy it is to accidentally shoot somebody with a cell phone versus somebody with an actual gun. But this whole time they're looking for a rifle. And you note that they tell him just to take his hands out of his pocket. At the time when they're yelling at him to do it, and he does what he's ordered, they're not saying, show us the gun. They're not saying, take the rifle out of your pocket. They're just saying, take your hands out of your pocket. And when he does, then they shoot him. It's only after they realize they've shot him and they remember that they're on video, because just like when we know we're being videotaped while we're having fist and rumbling with somebody, we yell, stop resisting. It's so that people think that the person is resisting and we're trying to protect ourselves. They are trained to yell, show us the gun, show us the gun. As your uncle, I'm sorry to say this, as your uncle is laying there dying and cannot move, they're screaming at the man to show him this imaginary gun that he supposedly has. And that is so when they get to the jury, all they have to prove to the jury is that they thought their lives were in danger, that they thought he might possibly have had a gun. And they'll say, see, we're yelling for him to show us the gun. So that means we thought he had the gun. But they don't do that until after they shoot him, And then it's interesting to me too, because once they realize they've shot him and he's on the ground and they realize the seriousness of their actions, then they start screaming for the gun. And they're like, we got to find the gun. We got to find the gun. We got to find the rifle. And then someone points and goes, there's a rifle. And he goes, no, dude, that's my rifle. So it's actually the medic's rifle that he's laid down to go tend to your uncle. And so they're desperately, desperately looking for a gun. And then you start hearing that they're kind of panicked. And then the screams turn from get the gun to we got to find a firearm, you guys, we got to find it, and they realize that he had a cell phone and he was not armed. And then it turns to, at the very end, it turns to, well, you know, he did throw something at us. And then you hear another agent go, that's right, I did see him throw something at us. And it's not yelling, but it's so they're trying to reason their way out of us. And then to show the relationship that the Border Patrol has with the TO nation is exemplified perfectly when an agent says, should we get more agents out here?
Yeah.
Because half of the nation is coming out of their house and surrounding us. They're terrified. They're terrified of the TO nation. And that, I think, goes to a lot of the reason why those agents pull the trigger. And I think another question that should be asked that your family, I would love to hear you, at least since you are willing to go in the press, would be, if these agents all had the same training, how come only 3 of them emptied their guns into my uncle versus the other 7 agents?
I have a question also for Yvonne, and I'm so sorry that even in talking with us about this, you're having to revisit the murder of your uncle. I just want you to know that we are aware of that, and even though you weren't present for it, this is someone you loved, and you know him, you know his home, you've seen the video. You are very aware of how all of this went down. Can you think of a reason why the TOPD or Border Patrol would want to silence your uncle? Did he have a history with them? Was he an enemy of the authorities? Did he document their misconduct? Did he date one of their wives? I mean, is there any reason you can imagine that they would want him silenced unto death?
The only reason I can think of is because he was very outspoken against corruption, even between Border Patrol and the people there. Because like we said, not 90% of Tohono'othams are doing illegal activities, but there are some. And he would always speak out against that. And being on the community council, he would speak out against that there as well. So that's the only reason I can think of. But going back to the video as well, they're very vague about whether they found a gun or not. They never say with the documentary voice, there was no gun found. They only say in the beginning that there was a cell phone found next to his body, but they never conclude that a gun was never found. So that leaves a lot of people questioning whether he did have a gun or not.
If he'd had a gun, they would not only be saying it, they would be showing it. They would be issuing photos with their press release saying this is the firearm that was found, you know. Sorry for my dogs.
Your dog's like, that's right.
Yeah, he's agreeing with you.
Well, and you know,
He listens to us talk about Border Patrol all the time, so he knows.
Yeah.
My dogs have dealt with Border Patrol, and it's okay. Hey, it's okay, girl. It's okay. But yeah, if they had found a gun. So the fact that they're not showing photos of it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
If they had found it, they would be showing it.
Oh, I know they didn't find one, but it really frustrates me how they're trying to smear his name just to justify what they did with the toxology report, with the fact that they're not saying whether they found a gun or not. You know, I know my uncle, like I said, he's been involved in my life, my whole life. If I had seen him out there acting erratically, trying to yell at them, trying to get away, trying to fight, I might think differently about what happened. But when he came out of his house and he was speaking the way he did, very calmly, I saw my uncle there. That was my Uncle Ray. He wasn't a crazy person that you should be emptying your clips at. You know, and that's why I chose to speak out, because it's very one-sided right now. And
yeah, and the Border Patrol has, and I can say this as an agent, is like we wait on that toxicology report. Because if it comes out with anything in it, then we're all like, oh. But I can just say from looking at the video and seeing your uncle and the way he responded to them, he did exactly as he was ordered. He was trying to figure out what they were doing on his property. Were they coming for his call? Why did they have their guns on him when he's the one who called them? So obviously he's thinking they're there for his call.
yeah.
And it just it does. Border Patrol is doing what they always do. They're influencing the press. And this idea that the toxicology report is released, I mean, yes, it's a different agency. It's the medical examiner that released that, but they don't have to release that. And whether or not anybody had any narcotics in them, obviously was not influencing his behavior. He did everything he was asked to do. He was very calm. It was the agents who were losing their shit and losing their mind and ended up murdering your uncle. Just an overkill situation. And that's another thing I'm kind of confused about too, because as an agent, I was always trained, you know, you shoot center mass to stop the threat, and you do what they call double tap. You shoot twice and reevaluate. These agents didn't reevaluate. They emptied their entire gun into 3 of them emptied their. And so we're thinking like 38 or something shots were fired at your uncle. At least 30 something shots were fired at your uncle. And then to turn around and say, you know, somebody with a redacted name has a prior this or that, and try and make it out to be your uncle. It either is your uncle they're talking about or it's not. What's the big deal? Just say what it is. It's not law enforcement sensitive information or anything like that. And then I think the thing that got to me the most is hearing the vice president of the Border Patrol Union within days of his agents murdering your uncle. he gets on this podcast and says, number one, I've seen the evidence. His exact words were, I've seen the particulars of the case. So because he claims he was the union representative called in to represent the agents who shot and killed your uncle. And he's talking about the case. He's talking about the case publicly, and they always say, we don't want to influence the case, but number one, they release all this other information. And then he starts talking about your uncle and saying that he was not a good person and this and that because of some prior run-in with a law that has nothing to do. And he even says, this has nothing to do with it. But I just, and he puts it out there because he wants to taint the future jury. He wants to influence the investigators. He wants to influence the public who is listening and following this case. I mean, what do you have to say about that, Yvonne? That the vice president of the Border Patrol Union, who is representing the men who shot and killed your uncle, is out there talking about your uncle and smearing him in that way?
I think it's just a cheap way to try and justify what they did. His past has nothing to do with what happened. The only thing that matters is how he was reacting, being faced with
In that moment.
men with guns and flashlights in his face. So it's very frustrating because that's what people are going to look at when they hear or see those things. And I just want people to know that it doesn't matter what happened.
No, yeah, I don't see any of it being relevant, but what they're doing right now, and Art Del Cueto needs to be held accountable. He needs to be, I don't know, fired. He needs to be fired. He needs to have his pension taken away from him for sitting there and trying to influence this case in the public and trying to deny Mr. Mattia, and frankly, trying to deny those agents the legal justice. Those agents are entitled to be found guilty or not found guilty in a court of law. And so every time they mess with the evidence or they get in front of the press and they do this stuff, but this is the modus operandi of the Border Patrol agents and CBP, and how they always constantly operate. They're always trying to control the situation. And that's why no agent has been held accountable for murdering or shooting anybody since the Border Patrol Critical Incident Team started in the late 1980s and early 90s.
And how can he speak up and say that it is a justified shoot when there's supposedly still an investigation going on?
And he said, oh, it was okay. The guys did everything correct. There was nothing wrong. It's like, you're representing them and I understand you're representing them and you have every right to represent them, and nobody's saying they don't need that representation, but you're sitting there getting in front of the press because you can get in front of the press very easily and you can say all this stuff, and yet the Mattia family is not able to get into the press. You are doing it because you are very brave. It is very rare to find a family member that has the strength to be able to do something like this. Can you talk a little bit about, is that because do the TO Nation people, do they feel oppressed or do they worry for their safety? I would think that the Mattia family they just saw one of their elders gunned down. So possibly they don't want to say anything for fear of their own lives.
Yes. Some of my family members still live there in Manager's Dam and are afraid of retaliation from either Border Patrol or cartel, because that's usually what shuts people up, just the fear of retaliation. Because there are illegal activities that go through our village, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And people do feel threatened. So I can understand not wanting to speak out because of that fear, but also I just it's not right. And my uncle wasn't afraid to speak out against that either.
Mhm.
You know, he did it all the time. And I think seeing what happened to him, even, I don't know, maybe made them more fearful.
Because he had evidence and he had talked openly about Border Patrol agents working with cartel in that
Yeah.
area. And I know that there's a lot of that going on. I know as an agent that there's a lot of corruption and a lot of stuff going on. And I also know that every time an agent is arrested for something like that, it's never the Border Patrol that came out and said, hey, we know that our agent was doing this. It's
Mhm.
always an outside agency like DEA or something like that, or the
Yeah.
locals. So let's say, so TOPD does their investigation, and let's say that they find that these agents it was a bad shoot, and these agents violated your uncle's rights and they took his life without any justification. Do you know what happens after that? Does the TOPD, does the TO Nation have the right to then require that Border Patrol hand over those 3 agents to be tried?
From what they told us, it's up to the U.S. attorney to press
Okay.
criminal charges. I really don't see. I don't know. I will. We were just trying to organize a protest in front of the White House there on the Throne of the Nation, which is their government building. Trying to push them to change their policies against calling Border Patrol for backup, giving them peace officer duties, which they should never have had in the first place, which is what this situation could have been dealt with as. I feel like if TOPD had gone and handled it on their own, the outcome would have been different.
Yeah, you can see a difference in the way that the TOPD officer is talking to your uncle
Mhm.
and in the way the Border Patrol agents happen. You can see a clear distinction in between that. And as far as we know, as far as the video showed, in as much as they would show us, it does not, at least right now, does not appear that the TOPD officer who asked your uncle to disarm, and when he did disarm, it does not appear that that man shot your uncle so far as we know.
And I can't remember if I read this or saw this in the video, but it appears as though after the weapons have been discharged, they're picking up their casings. You know, the agents or officers who murdered Raymond are policing their own brass. Is that what happened? And is that standard procedure in an officer involved shooting?
It wasn't shown in the video, but it was a comment made by one of the family members who waited for many, many hours on the side while Raymond's body sat in his front yard,
Mhm.
and stated that agents were picking up their own brass. Now, I don't know if that's true, or if that was, if that was CITs or investigators doing that kind of stuff. I'm not sure yet because we haven't talked to anybody about that. I do note that I do want to say this, but let me back up a minute. The Border Patrol agent who was the EMT that claimed to be trying to rescue your uncle after they gunned him down. I find it interesting. He keeps saying, you guys need to help me, and nobody's helping him. You got 10 people standing around your uncle, and he's like, guys, come on, help me get his clothes off. I got to see where the wounds are, and blah, blah, blah. And they have his chest opened up and or shirt taken off, and they're looking at, and one agent is like, yeah, here's one here. And the agent who keeps demanding help is so busy cutting through your uncle's clothes, trying to get him completely naked or down to his chones.
Mhm.
That means underwear, in case people don't know. And instead of actually physically trying to help your uncle, who was still alive, you can hear that your uncle is still alive at the time. And so he's not actually doing anything. And then all of a sudden they start CPR on him without even addressing the bullet hole wounds, and he's still, but he's still alive, and they're pumping on his chest. And so it's bizarre, but I also, there's a lot of confusion. I will admit there's a lot of confusion when a shooting happens, and it's hard to maintain the evidence, especially around the victim. It is very hard. And what you see in that video is complete disorganization from the Border Patrol, complete unawareness of keeping the scene the way it was. However, when it comes to your uncle's machete, when they talk about your uncle's machete on the video, they say, don't touch it, don't move it, because they know it's evidence. But meanwhile, all around him, they're running all around in circles and all over the place and this and that, destroying any and all evidence. And if they picked up their brass, if they did pick up their brass, or if they moved their brass or kicked it with their feet while they're running around supposedly trying to find this gun that they claim that your uncle had, which he never had, then they are destroying the evidence that shows where the agents were standing approximately. You can tell by where the shell casings are discharged. You can get an about where the guys were, and by their footprints and stuff. All that would be gone and absolutely destroyed. And this is a common thing that Border Patrol agents do. And they're not really trained very well on securing the scene, unless they think it's going to help them. Then they're all over that shit. So that's what you see. That's what I see in that video is like, oh, well, oh yeah, the machete is a good reason why we would shoot him. Okay, don't touch the machete, kind of thing. So,
well, I can tell you that the whole investigation was at the crime scene was done at night.
Mm-hmm.
By morning, they were all packed up and gone. So no one ever came back to view the crime scene or investigate it. When we went to my uncle's house the next morning, there were no markings, there was no tape, there was nothing to show that an investigation was done. But you could see all the bullet holes on his home that were there.
Did you guys happen to find any slugs or anything lying around, or shell casings? Nothing. They got all the slugs out of the house and everything.
And the stuff in his home was just thrown around.
So they ransacked his home.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
And did they take any weapons he may have owned?
We don't know.
We don't
know if he had a weapon, a gun or a rifle, as they said.
Huh.
So
That's
I have
interesting.
His cell phone gone. So
cell phone's gone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mariana.
Did Yvonne say his cell phone is gone? They took that in as evidence?
Yeah, that's normal. That, I mean, apparently, he's saying that he called and obviously that was on his person. So that would be normal to take that.
So Yvonne, we had an agent supposedly die hitting a gate that the government installed at our property. And the investigation went all night into the morning, and they left markings. There was orange spray paint, there was tape, there were different things present. And you said there was none of that at your uncle's home?
Well, that's what I was expecting to go and find, but there was absolutely nothing to show that there was an investigation done. The bullet holes were there, but there was no like markings to show where each one was. And there was, from where they came into my uncle's yard, there was absolutely nothing. It's like they just totally cleaned up the place and left.
What do you have to say? What do you have, like, something you want to say to CBP and the Border Patrol on behalf of your family and what you want the justice system to do? What do you think should be done?
In a perfect outcome, the 3 agents who shot would be fired because they obviously don't know what they're doing. I want them to know that they shot an innocent man. I also would like to see change in the relationship between the Tohono government and TOPD and Border Patrol. You know, at least reevaluate the relationship, because as of now, we don't feel comfortable in calling anyone. If something were to happen while we were there, we definitely do not want to call Border Patrol. But we feel like if we were to call TOPD to come out and resolve an issue, you know, are they going to call Border Patrol for backup? Is that what we're going to be facing if we ever have to call for help? So we feel like the trust has been broken already. Like, I think it was the US attorney who said, we're looking into it, we're investigating, but we know we need to work on our relationship. And the trust has been broken already. It's too late, too little, too late.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those are just words. There will be no rebuilding. I've heard exactly the same words from Border Patrol and from the Texas Department of Public Safety and from the Mission Police Department with regard to activities at the Butterfly Center. And there's never any follow through. They say these words for the cameras or the media, and that's it.
And that's what it feels like. It feels like they're saying what they think we want to hear to shut up. But
yeah, and they bank on the fact that the majority of the victims of Border Patrol violence are either undocumented or they're on the borderlands, and they're in situations like your family is, where they're afraid to talk. There's a lot of oppression that can be felt, and I can even feel it. It's absurd, the feelings that I can even feel as a white woman who used to wear that uniform, and I can feel it. And I know if I feel it, it's got to be like 100 times different for somebody of color, somebody who's Native, and somebody who lives there day in and day out with these agents constantly roaming around and being violent towards community members.
So one day we had this Girl Scout event. It was well publicized. We had 100 little girls at the Butterfly Center on a Saturday, starting around 9 a.m. And we're leading them out of the building, maybe 9:30 after orientation, and into the woods and the gardens and the grounds. And suddenly, there's this rush of Border Patrol. The helicopters overhead, the trucks are parked at the gate. Agents on ATV and on foot are running in with their automatic or semi-automatic weapons and surround us, environmental educators and Girl Scouts, at a nature center on a Saturday morning. And nobody called them. And the agents clearly were stunned when they arrive, and it's little Girl Scouts and their mommies, their troop leaders, and us. And they're all like, sorry, you know, pretend we weren't here kind of thing. This is one of those things that happened at or about the time that we started speaking out against any plans for border wall and how ineffective it was and all of that. And since then, we've experienced a million other things, again, that feel like intimidation or retaliation. Have you, Yvonne, you said that you and other tribal members fear retaliation. Is that just a fear, or is it something that is real and has been reported or experienced?
Well, my uncle had mentioned that he was driving and a Border Patrol agent followed him from, which is like an hour outside of our village, to a town. He followed him all the way to the town. And he said he felt harassed with that. Also, we we were made aware that there was a flight pattern that was monitoring us in our home. It monitored us from our home to where we did the protest in front of the Border Patrol station in Y, Arizona. There were 2 helicopters that landed near our compound one day just before the funeral. Also, several jets have been flying by very, very low. You could see inside of the cockpit, they're flying that low. And also we see multiple helicopters flying by, which is unusual.
You have the right, and your family has the right, to be as loud as possible. And in 30 years of knowing the Border Patrol and studying the Border Patrol after I understood what it was and left with disgust and all this other stuff, and coming to terms with my life as an agent and everything, has taught me is that the only cases that do even remotely get anywhere, and I'm thinking of the Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez case, was because his grandmother, Doña Taire, that woman did not shut up. That woman is like, she is loud and she's demanding, and the same with Maria Puga, who is Anastasio Hernandez Rojas's widow. And those are the only 2 families that have ever seen justice out of Border Patrol killings. And so, you know, it's up to you all. You all have to live on the nation. You all have to juggle your own community and how they feel about things. And you have to juggle your own feelings and whether you can, it's a lot of stress and so forth. But I think I've mentioned to you before that one of the things that Doña Taire and I talk about a lot, the grandmother to Jose Antonio, is that it's just been impossible for their family to heal. It's been impossible to move on. And people say, why do you have a community event every month on the 10th? Which was the day that he was murdered. Why do you celebrate him yearly? Why do you keep talking about this? And it's like, because it never ended for us.
Yeah.
And that's what you and your family is looking at. And so I want to encourage you to obviously, to within your traditions and what you feel is good for your community and your heritage, to seek help and whatever kind of healing that looks like for you and your family members. And just know that it's going to be a very long road and a lot of obstacles along the way. So.
Yeah, I've been asked that myself, like, maybe you guys need to stop talking about it so you could heal. But I feel like it's just never going to go away, because we've never dealt with somebody being murdered this tragically, and just to know that he was there trying to do his best and he was just murdered, our lives are never going to be the same, never ever.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the only way we can heal, because just that people are aware of what Border Patrol are doing to us.
Yeah.
Just as a nation, as a people, and not only about my Uncle Ray, but
Right.
you know, the oppression that we do have to live in every day, and the fear that we have to live in now.
And there will be a lot of moments where you're like, I can't do this today. And you might, Maria Puga and Doña Taire, they go through like, okay, I need to take a year off. I mean, literally, because they know another year's going to go by and nothing's going to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's not a bad thing to do either. And you can always come back to it, or you could decide to stay distant from it, or you can let other people fight it. I'm going to be talking about your uncle for the rest of my life. I'm going to be talking about this case for the rest of my life. And if you get invited to go to Congress or anything, to speak or anything like that, let us know, and maybe we can help you, get there, or help get your testimony up there. And I know it feels like in the era that we're in that nobody's listening to us, but we have purpose, we're on the side of right. And we're creating alliances, ex-Border Patrol agent here. Mariana's a white woman who's adopted into, her dad was Mexican and American doctor, so she speaks Spanish fluently like a native. And then we have here Tono Odom, Native member whose family has been victimized, and so that's what it's going to take to get out of this kind of thing. And anything that we can do for you. Is there anything that you want to say that we didn't touch upon, or that you feel needs to be addressed?
No, not that I can think of right now. I think it went really well.
Okay. And if you ever want to come back, if you ever want to do anything, or you want to do your own video and have us put it out,
Okay.
we're on it, whatever we can do. And if you need me to come and talk about anything, I've always offered that. And I do not charge families anything. I do it out of my own pocket. So just speak up and ask.